My father's exact words were, "Sit down. You embarrass this family." He said them in front of 14 senior officers. In a briefing room on a military base he had spent 30 years believing was his territory. He said them to me. And then the door opened. And everything changed. Let me tell you what happened in that room. But first, let me tell you what my father never knew. What nobody in my family had ever known. What I had spent 6 years building in complete silence while they built their version of who I was. My name is Captain Sarah Hayes, and the version of me that my family knew, the quiet one, the disappointing one, the daughter who had chosen a military career that her decorated, General Father considered beneath his legacy, was not the complete version. Not even close. My father's name is General William Hayes, 32 years of service, 2 wars, a chest full of decorations, and a reputation that preceded him into every room he entered. A man who had built his entire identity around the military, around rank, around legacy, around the particular pride of someone who had risen as far as it is possible to rise, and who measured everyone around him by whether they were rising at the same rate. I was not rising at the same rate. By my father's calculation, by the calculation he had been making since I enlisted, since I chose a path that did not follow his, since I became a version of a soldier he did not fully understand. I was a disappointment. Quietly, consistently, in the way of someone who has given up being surprised by it, a disappointment. He had never said it directly. He did not need to. It lived in the pauses, in the questions about my rank, my posting, my advancement, in the comparisons, never explicit, always present, and in my brother Marcus, who had followed exactly the path my father had laid out, who wore the right rank at the right age, who was in this briefing room today as a lieutenant colonel, and who had, approximately 40 seconds before my father told me to sit down, introduced me to the senior officers, present as his little sister who works in logistics. Logistics. I do not work in logistics. I had not worked in logistics for 4 years. But Marcus did not know that. My father did not know that. Nobody in my family knew that, because the work I had been doing for 4 years existed in a classification level that my father, despite his rank, did not have access to, and because I had chosen, deliberately, for reasons that I am about to explain, to let them believe the version of me they had constructed, until today. Today was my brother's promotion ceremony, and the reason I was in this briefing room, the reason I was sitting in the back row, in my dress uniform, while my father told me to sit down and stop embarrassing the family, was not because I had been invited. It was because of the man who had just walked through the door, Admiral James Cole, Chief of Naval Operations, the highest-ranking military officer I had ever personally briefed. The man who, 4 years ago, in a room very similar to this one, had looked at my file and said, "We need her. Whatever she's doing now, she's done. She works for us." Admiral Cole walked into that briefing room. He looked at the assembled officers, and then his eyes found me. In the back row, where my father had just told me to sit down, stay with me, because what Admiral Cole said next, and what happened, to every person in that room's understanding of who I was, is something my father has never fully recovered from. Admiral Cole's aide, a young lieutenant who moved with the particular efficiency of someone whose entire job is to make his superior's presence feel inevitable, entered the room first and said, "Gentlemen, Admiral Cole." Everyone stood. My father stood. My brother stood. The 14 senior officers stood. I stood. Admiral Cole entered. He moved through the room the way men of his rank move, not quickly, not slowly, with the particular, deliberate pace of someone who understands that every room they enter is waiting for them. He reached the front. He looked at the assembled officers. Standard. Expected. The opening assessment of a senior officer taking in a room. And then, not standard, not expected, his gaze moved to the back row. To me, something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. He had known I was here, I realized later, because Admiral Cole does not enter rooms without knowing who is in them. But something else. A decision being made. "Captain Hayes," he said. Across a room of 14 senior officers and 1 general and 1 lieutenant colonel. "Sir," I said. "Front of the room," he said. Please. I walked to the front of the room. I was aware, acutely, precisely aware of my father's face as I passed him, of the recalibration happening in real time, of my brother beside him, very still in the way of someone who has just understood that the introduction he made 40 seconds ago may have been a significant miscalculation. I stood at the front of the room, beside Admiral Cole. Gentlemen, Admiral Cole said. Before we proceed, I want to introduce someone. Some of you may recognize the name. Most of you will not recognize the face, for reasons that are themselves classified. He looked at me. Captain Hayes has been operating under a cover designation for the past 4 years. The work she has done in that capacity, I am authorized to tell you today, because the operation recently concluded, is directly responsible for the intelligence that resulted in the capture of 3 of the most significant targets this organization has pursued in the past decade. The room was very quiet. The operation, Admiral Cole continued, has been classified at a level that most of the officers in this room do not have access to. What I can tell you, what I am telling you today, specifically because of who else is in this room, is that Captain Hayes' work over the past 4 years represents some of the most significant intelligence contributions this branch has seen in 20 years. He looked at my father. My father, General William Hayes, 32 years of service, 2 wars, a chest full of decorations, was looking at me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not pride, not yet. Pride would come later, complicated and imperfect and real. In that moment, something earlier than pride. Recognition. The particular recognition of someone who has been looking at a person their entire life and has just, for the first time, seen them clearly. My brother's hand, I noticed, was resting on the table. It was not entirely steady. Admiral Cole turned back to the room. Captain Hayes will be receiving the Distinguished Service Medal at a ceremony next month. The citation is classified. The medal is not. He looked at me one more time. Carry on, Captain, he said. Yes, sir, I said. I walked back to my seat. I sat down. In the back row, where my father had told me to sit, down 40 seconds before the Admiral walked through the door. The briefing continued. I will not detail what was discussed. It is not relevant and most of it is classified regardless. What I will tell you is that for the remaining 40 minutes of that briefing, my father did not look at me once, not because he was ignoring me, because he was processing something that 40 minutes was not enough time to fully process. After the briefing, in the corridor, in the particular dispersal of people leaving a room, my brother found me first. Marcus, Lieutenant Colonel, the one who had introduced me as his little sister who works in logistics. He stood in front of me for a moment, something working in his face. Why didn't you tell us? He said. I looked at him. When? I said. When you introduced me to 14 senior officers as the sister who works in logistics? That would have been a good moment. He looked at the floor. I didn't know, he said. I know you didn't, I said. That was the point. He looked up. Were you waiting for this? He said. Specifically for today? I thought about that honestly. I was not waiting for a moment, I said. I was doing the work. The moment arrived on its own. He nodded slowly. My father found me 10 minutes later. In a quieter part of the corridor, alone. He had dismissed his aide, which told me he understood that what was about to happen was not a conversation for witnesses. He stood in front of me. General William Hayes, 32 years, 2 wars. He looked at me for a long moment without speaking. And then he said, not the thing I had expected, not an apology or an explanation or any of the things that the situation might have suggested. How long have you been operating at that level? 4 years, I said. And before that? 2 years building the cover, I said. 6 years total. He was quiet. 6 years, he said. You have been doing this for 6 years and He stopped. You had no idea, I said. Not unkindly, simply accurately. No, he said. I had no idea. We stood in that corridor for a long time. My father and I have never been people who talk easily. That is, I want to be precise, not entirely his fault. We are similar in ways that make us difficult for each other. The same stubbornness, the same tendency toward demonstration over declaration, toward showing rather than saying. The same belief that work is its own language and that the work, if it is good enough, will eventually speak for itself. The work had spoken, perhaps louder than either of us had expected. I said things, my father said, over the years. About your career, about your choices. Yes, I said. I was wrong, he said. 4 words, from a man for whom those 4 words represented. I understood this. Knowing him, a significant act. I know, I said. I'm proud of you, he said. I should have said that before today. I should have, he stopped. Started again. I built a version of you in my head that was smaller than you are. That's on me. Not on you. I looked at my father, at the general, at the man who had told me to sit down 40 minutes ago in front of 14 senior officers. I know, I said again, and I need you to know. I wasn't doing any of it to prove something to you. I was doing it because it was the work, because it mattered, because the mission mattered regardless of whether you knew about it. I know that now, he said. Good, I said. We stood for another moment. And then, imperfectly, in the way of 2 people who have never been easy with each other and are not going to become easy overnight. My father put his hand on my shoulder, brief, firm, the particular gesture of a man who shows what he feels in the only language he has. I understood it. Marcus took longer, not because he is less than my father, but because my brother had built more of his identity around the comparison, around being the one who had followed the right path, achieved the right rank, made the right choices. The discovery that his little sister who worked in logistics had been operating at a level he had not reached, and might not reach, that required more time to process. He got there, imperfectly, over several months, in conversations that were sometimes difficult and sometimes surprisingly honest. He got there. The Distinguished Service Medal ceremony was the following month. Classified citation, which meant the citation was not read aloud, which meant the people in that room knew the weight of the medal without knowing the specifics. My father was in the front row. My brother was beside him. When Admiral Cole pinned the medal, when he stepped back and the room came to attention, I looked at my father. He was looking at me, and the expression on his face, finally, imperfectly, 6 years late, was exactly what I had never needed it to be, and exactly what I was glad to see anyway. Here is what 6 years of classified work and a briefing room and one sentence from Admiral Cole taught me. Do the work, not for the moment, not for the room, not for the person who told you to sit down. Do it because it matters. Do it because the mission is real. Do it with everything you have, in complete silence, for as long as it takes. The room will find out eventually. Let it find out on its own terms. Sit down. You're nobody. My father said that 40 seconds before the Admiral walked in, and I sat down because I had nothing to prove. The work had already proven it.